Jason, it strikes me there were two kinds of Republicans in that chamber today. There were the kinds of Republicans who saw what they saw and heard what they heard and experienced the 1-6 insurrection and voted accordingly, and the kind who were making some sort of political calculation to cling to Donald Trump like he's a life buoy. And they are never going to let him go no matter no matter what had happened to Mike Pence. They wouldn't have cared. It wouldn't have mattered. Let's play a couple of, or let's go through a couple of type A. This is Richard Burr, who actually to me was a bit of a surprise. This was his statement on his vote to convict. He said the evidence is compelling that Trump is guilty of inciting an insurrection against a co-equal branch of government and that the charge rises to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors. By what he did and what he did not do, Trump violated his oath of office to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. And now let's listen to Senator Bill Cassidy, who was much more blunt and direct about it.
Our Constitution and our country is more important than any one person. I voted to convict President Trump because he is guilty.
Burr is not running for re-election. Maybe that explains him. Cassidy just won re-election, so he's got 6 more years to explain that to any Trumpies in his state. What do you make of the 7, Jason, the ones who voted to convict? And do you think that that in any way changes the overall outcomes for the Republican Party?
It changes the overall outcome, Joy, from the symbolic and the messaging standpoint, which is really what the second part of this trial is about. What I think people need to understand is that there was 2 goals with impeachment. One was to get a conviction and keep Donald Trump from ever being able to run for office. But the other was to hammer in the message to the American public that the Republican Party has been discredited as a potential governing coalition for this country. So having 7 Republicans stand forward and say, yes, this is bad. The fact that they tried to kill my colleagues is bad. The fact that Eugene Goodman is the only reason that Mitt Romney might be alive today is kind of bad. Maybe we should actually vote this guy out of office. That was an important message. But I honestly have to say this about a lot of these Republicans. Is there really a difference to me? No. It's a difference between cowards and weasels, cats and dogs. It's not really that much of a difference, because at the end of the day, so many of these Republicans, including ones who voted for conviction today, voted with Trump and justified so much of his nonsense all the way up until this point. They were complicit in building the monster that one day tried to eat them. So I don't give them a tremendous amount of credit. I think they did the right and decent thing. But the moment we start getting to a point where in American public, where we say that doing the right and decent thing is something that people should be praised for, we've pretty much given up on the whole democratic process. So, look, I'm happy that 7 people realize that being murdered on the job is something that you don't like, but I'm not willing to give them a tremendous amount of credit for it. And I'll also say this, these people might also be the only ones who can get some of that Fortune 500 money, because we heard a couple weeks ago that there are large corporations that are like, hey, look, if you voted against conviction, if you voted against impeachment, it may cost you in your pockets when next time you're trying to run.
And I just believe Mitch McConnell's all about that. I don't believe everything he said, he'll change his mind the minute somebody tried to indict Trump. So I think it was about the donors.
Yeah.
Charlie Sykes, the counterfactual to that is that if you want to encourage good behavior, then you need to praise good behavior, right? Yeah. If we want Republicans to get their souls back in their bodies, when we see the signs of a soul, we should say, you have a soul. Congratulations, you did the right thing. Am I right, or is Jason right? Because they did go along with it, but if in this moment they did the right thing, can sort of praising good behavior encourage more of them to snatch back their souls?
Well, exactly. And Tim Miller and I had a podcast we just finished where we talked about this. Look, Bill Cassidy showed a lot of guts making this vote from Louisiana. And when people do good and decent things in this era, we ought to praise them. But this should have been a very easy vote for Republicans, both politically and substantively. The evidence was overwhelming. It was right in front of them. It should have been an easy vote to convict. It also should have been an easy vote because this was their opportunity to take the off-ramp to move on from Donald Trump. Instead, they basically engaged in jury nullification. But I thought one thing that struck me about listening to Mitch McConnell was kind of a reminder that nobody during the trial or after the trial has actually praising Donald Trump's behavior or defending Donald Trump's behavior. They're hiding behind the constitutional technicality, or they're playing whataboutism. But it is interesting the number of Republicans that are saying that Trump's behavior may not have been impeachable, but it was disgraceful. So I do think that one of the things we're seeing is they're kind of opening the door to a post-Trump era. Look, I mean, I'm not going to defend Mitch McConnell. I mean, the fact that he orchestrated this, he could have had the trial before Donald Trump left office. He chose not to, and then he pointed to that as a technicality. I mean, he was very, very much two-faced. But it is interesting the number of people who implied that, this is not the end, that there are other things that should happen, that we should have a 9/11 commission, a bipartisan 9/11 commission. There should be grand jury. There should be criminal investigations, possibly indictments. So it'll be interesting to see what comes next. But this was a defining vote for 43 Republicans. It's a defining vote for a party that has turned itself into a cult of personality. And now they're going to live with Donald Trump for a very, very long time.